I hand the stage to Mark Sims.
Thank you, Leah. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Well, first of all, thanks for being here. This is a topic that I'm very passionate about, and prior to talking about that, I want to make some appropriate acknowledgments. First of all, today is, some of you may know, is International Women's Day. And since this topic is about what's stopping you, what's limiting you, this is a good segment for all of you that are serious about breaking down those barriers that get in front of all of us. So give yourself another cheer just for fun. I also want to acknowledge Washington Multifamily Housing Association. For context, our organization is headquartered here. However, we are in multiple states and regions, and we're in multiple associations and in multiple industry associations. Washington Multifamily Host Association is, bar none, the best association for industry advocacy, for education, for events, for fun. So give them a hand as well. And make sure you have an opportunity to thank them before this all concludes later today. Last but not least, I want to acknowledge every single person in this room and everyone that has come to EdCon. Because of your attendance, this is the largest EdCon that WMFA has ever put out. And it doesn't happen unless you show up. Everybody has busy lives. You showed up today. Give yourself a final hand, and then I'll stop asking you. All right, thank you. So let's get started. We already did that. That's me. You know, I almost thought about keeping a hat on because I don't know a number of you in the room, and sometimes it's kind of funny to fool some that don't know that I might be bald, but anyway. So what's limiting you topics today? We're going to talk about boldness before balance, naming your negatives, how you start, habits and hacks, and in order to have greatness, you need gratefulness. Sound good? Okay. All right, balance, boldness, and barriers. So I decided to pick this slide because I think we can all agree that in this place we live, for the most part, we live a very convenient and comfortable life. I'm very much reminded of that when I travel abroad and I see how most live. And I'm not by any means saying that comforts and conveniences are a bad thing. However, when that is what our primary aspiration is, and if we seek contentment, then we likely don't seek anything that truly tests us. I mean, whether it is a chair or the clothes we wear, we're always seeking comfort. I think I even see that's called a comfy. It's a wearable blanket. Does anybody have a wearable blanket in here? Are they awesome? Okay. Maybe it's better than I think what the premise is that anyone in here, you're not in here because you haven't reached a certain point that was a barrier to you or a certain obstacle. And we know that growth doesn't exist in a place of comfort. And I think that Denzel Washington said it best, and I love him as an actor, and I love him actually as just a speaker and thought leader. But he said, ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. And ironically, there are so many times we have a disdain for challenge. We seek to not contend with the obstacle. When in fact, that is exactly what we need to do. We think that happiness is contentment, that it's comfort. It might be, but as it pertains to optimal progress, for all the individuals that I have ever met, I can tell you that is not the case. And I will tell you that the things I am not, to provide myself some credibility here. So these are the things I am not. I'm not a professional speaker. Womp, womp, womp. But I do have an opportunity to speak throughout the year. I'm not an author yet, although I am in some forewords, and I've had an opportunity to meet some of the authors you might know of, books you've read of people domestically and around the world. And I also am not in any way elite to these topics or exempt from these challenges. In fact, as I share some of my story, you're going to learn that it's because I have faced these challenges that I am here standing in front of you today. So what I am is, I am someone who has a thirst for learning, someone who has leaned in. I am someone who is on many boards, 7 currently, one of which is WMPA. And I am also a founder and CEO of a company of where I started with many, many limits. In fact, so many limits that I really had nothing other than my attitude and my effort. And I instituted something I called the 7 of 7 and the 5 after 5, which is 7 days a week, 5 conversations of development and growth after 5 o'clock. I don't recommend it, but it's what I did because I had had the rug pulled out from me so many times preceding that. I decided not to wonder anymore, wish anymore, or hope anymore. I get emotional thinking about it because in that moment of my life, hope was the beggar, and I wasn't willing to contend with it. So, I don't know if you have seen the speeches of Tony Robbins. I had an opportunity to see him a few different times, one of which was Show Arena in Kent. Did anybody go to that? That was kind of, no, just me, okay. Well, I mean, in a venue of that size, it's really great to actually get up close and personal with somebody. And this is a statement that I believe makes a tremendous amount of sense because we think of contentment and comfort, well, really it's progress. And it's scientifically proven that progress is the key to happiness. It's not a destination. If any of us believe we're here, or wherever we're at in our age and stage of our journey, it's if we reach this, we're not necessarily going to reach the pinnacle of happiness. It's the journey, and it's not a destination, it's a campaign. So, I encourage you to enjoy the journey, because nothing is better than that fulfillment of progress. All right, I'm probably going to become unpopular. I don't believe in work-life balance. Now bear with me. I have some really close friends who speak on the topic and who've written several books that say it's an illogical statement. Now I'll tell you, I wouldn't go that far because I believe that its intentions are positive. But I do believe that it is misplaced. Because if we think about the concept of work-life balance, as it stands here behind me, it's as if they're somehow opposing one another. They should not oppose one another. Work is a part of life. Life is a part of work. It's not an arch nemesis. And we shouldn't measure it by the time increment opposed to one another. If we work too much, perhaps we feel guilty that we don't have enough personal time. And if we take too much personal time, are we then tracking how much we need to work? It shouldn't be in the time measurement that we think about work-life balance, but instead the quality of time that we spend doing whatever it is we're doing in an entire life. So, not a fan, big fan of counterbalance, though, but that's another discussion. And I just would encourage you all to think more about boldness before balance. Boldness in everything that you do. And sometimes when you're bold, I can share from experience, you'll find yourself alone. Some people might even call you odd. I've been called crazy. But you will find your tribe because balance can hold one back and be the barrier of breakthroughs. It can be the governor on your brain that disallows you from taking the next step. And there's a couple of those emotions that I've found that are universal, regardless of industry, regardless of where everyone is at. And then what I call the 2 F words. Does anybody want to guess what the first F word is? And it's not the traditional F word, you might say. So, although sometimes the emotion can accompany that.
Fear. Family.
Not family, but what do I hear over here?
Fear.
Family's fear, correct. Fear, the most predominant emotion that prompts action or inaction. I love this acronym, false evidence appearing real, because the reality is, oftentimes we are afraid of what never comes. We'll touch on that stat later. Fear holds us back. And what do we fear most? Anyone? Failure. We fear failure. Ironic, isn't it? That because we fear failing, that it induces a lack of action, a paralysis such that we don't act at all. That makes failure what? Certain. no progress is decline for sure. So I encourage you all, for yourselves, we have leaders in this room, and for your teams to allow for failure. Because if you're not failing, you're not pushing the limits far enough to find the next best level of what you can become. Your next best version, yourself and your team. And forget the mistakes. You're going to make them. We've all made them. I know I am standing here because I've likely made more than most of you. Forget the mistake. Remember the lesson. It's the cost of admission. This is a great author, and just so everybody knows, I will have QR codes at the conclusion of this that you can tap and hit and so forth. So this author had an opportunity to meet him a couple different times. He has wonderful books. 35 years old, he's written 27 books. Ryan Holiday. One of my favorites, also love Ego's the Enemy, another good one, is the obstacle is the way. It reframes what we seek to avoid and instead seeking the obstacle, because that is truly the path to success. It's the only way. All right, just for fun, I have a universal $100 gift card for anybody who can tell me who that human being is, unless you're on the Fikes team. It's not me. Well, yeah, okay. Maybe I should. You get one anyway. All right. The more handsome gentleman on the right with hair. Who is that? Anybody know? I'll save this. I have another quiz later. 1,001, 1,002, 1,003. All right, I'm going to ask some questions. Has anybody in here ever run a marathon? Great. Not easy, right? Anybody competed in an Ironman?
Iron Cowboy.
No? Anyone ever run a couple Ironmans in a year's time? I've not. I'm just curious who we have in the room. Imagine someone, an ordinary human being that could run an Ironman in 50 days, in 50 states, in a row. Meet James Lawrence, the Iron Cowboy.
She said it. She said it. Sorry.
I'm conflicted. Okay, so the rules are for the remainder of the $100 universal gift cards is you have to speak up. Okay? Face your fears. All right. So 2.4 miles swim, 112, 26 and a half, a marathon from Alaska. Or Hawaii, Alaska, Washington, and all the way through in the interest of time. His last 7 were his best times. They tested his physiological signs. The only thing they couldn't measure is the one thing that made the difference. His mindset. Just like his shirt said. Mindset is everything. And I'll never forget what he told me in that moment that I had my arm around him. Is I said, what's your secret, James? What's your secret? And he said, Mark, don't limit your challenges. Challenge. Always challenge your limits. Wise words from somebody who has some credibility and someone who's accomplished something I don't believe anyone ever would, but it would be fun to see them try. And I actually was inspired to go out and get this book, realizing that it is fear that holds me back, and I know that holds us all back. And you can see that's my actual book. It's tattered and torn and has a little bookmarker in it. But on the topic of fear, is anybody in here afraid of heights? Thanks, I don't feel alone. Okay. I could. There's other things I'm fearful of, but I wanted to focus on that. So a really great friend of mine and I were talking, and I shared what one of my biggest fears was, and he shared that his fear was climbing. So on the topic of fear, and he also got this journal. About 2 weeks later, I saw an email in my inbox that said, Alpine Ascents, Mount Rainier climb paid. So we both had an opportunity to face our fears, which we did. And just for the record, we happened to get lucky enough to go on the climb in the warmest summer on record with the most breakaway crevasses of the glaciers on Mount Rainier. So there were only about 15 of them we had to cross. So no big deal when you're looking a few hundred feet down. But that fear was faced, and the beautiful thing a few years later, because we ended up doing a climb every year, is we thought, well, let's do better. Let's climb 3 mountains in 7 days. So once again, we decided to set out, and we did it. And I don't know, has anybody here climbed a mountain before? Okay. The first, what are your thoughts? Is it fun the whole way? No. It's called type 2 fun. Type 2 fun, meaning that it's not often fun along the way, but the gratification at the conclusion is worth what you have to go through. So I was able to be atop Mount Rainier and watch the sun rise and the shadow cast before it. Not long after I went to, I'm the blob on the left, and generally the bigger, heavier person in our group. So watched the sun come up. That was the guide team behind us, and this is me coming down Mount Rainier, and I had a pretty happy smile of having accomplished something that I was really, really fearful of, and putting that behind me. So I'm not encouraging danger. We had guides on all these trips, by the way, and I would highly encourage that. But there's something about facing your fears. All right, naming your negatives. So I will tell you that we all have a voice or multiple voices inside our head, and we're not crazy. And they're negative in nature. Is there anybody in the room that doesn't ever have a negative voice? Good, because I was about to contact one of my friends who's a noetic scientist and study you, because you would be the first human being on the planet to not have them. All right, so I'd like you all to take this quick poll and give us your idea of what you think the number of thoughts that an average person has in any given day. This will be fun. And provided the tech works, I think it's going to work. Keep on climbing. Okay. All right, we're just about there. There's close to 100 and some people in here. All right. Well, it's looking like 12,000 to 60,000 is the winner. And I will tell you that I am really happy that I didn't offer any universal gift cards. That is in fact the answer. And we think about that, 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts. But here's what's even more, not to play on words, mind-blowing. 80% are negative. 80%. And this is even a step further, is that 95% of them are rinse and repeats, often from the day before. Talk about a loop of psychological warfare that we're all having inside of ourselves. I had a mentor that told me, my upbringing was interesting. I had a lot of negative self-talk. We'll leave it there. And told me, Mark, you need to name your negatives. There was a book I read once, and I'm like, okay. So I started naming Negative Ned, Jackass Judge, Worrying Walt, and I found out there was actually a book called Positive Intelligence by Shirzad Shamin. I have this QR code at the end. That speaks about the 10 negative voices, the saboteurs, as it's called, that bring us down. Now, it's not just a book that talks about the negatives, but it also talks about the positives. And also, just to be clear, we have a variation of those 10 voices, but every single one of us, as studies have indicated, and there have been multiple thousands, all have a judge. We're always harder on ourselves. Always. And so, the thing about that is that because we're judged, because we're negative, we worry. and I always remember this statistic because it was my college football number, is that 91% of what we worry about never happens. We think, okay, well, maybe worrying's not that big of a deal when we all worry. Except for the fact that you are less effective, you get less work done, and you're a lot less happy. On the topic of what's stopping you, what's limiting you, and what's creating barriers, those are check marks in the wrong column. So, awareness, that's important. So, the saboteur voices, the negative bias we all have in a survive mode and instinct, they exist. But there is a way to rewire oneself if we have awareness to think about the positive, the confident, the cool, the collected, rational side. But it does take practice. And I would highly recommend this book. And if you need a positive voice, does anybody know? Well, the name's up there, okay. You ready for the gift? Like, who's that? His name's up there? Right. So we happen to have Jocko Willink for a learning event. I'm a big fan. Ex-Navy SEAL commander, has a podcast, has a book called Extreme Ownership. A decorated individual, and I think an outstanding human being. But when I have my judge, my jackass voice, I think of Jocko telling me that excuses are lies. If you ever want to YouTube excuses are lies for 2 minutes to fire yourself up or fire your team, fire away. All right. So it's all that action we have to act. All right, so the start. So I'm curious, who has a really cool morning routine that they'd like to share? Something that's really like your secret sauce. Anybody?
Get my coffee.
Do I only get things with universal gift cards? Please.
I always try to at least make my bed. First thing when I roll out.
Nice.
The bed is made. If I don't make my bed, usually I'm thrown off because I decided to it, and I'm wondering why is my day thrown off and I can move my bed isn't made. I'm like, it's because I didn't make my bed.
I love it. Did you read that book? Admiral McCraven wrote a book called Start by Making Your Bed. So very good. One more, please.
I have a daily affirmation of gratitude that I wrote myself. It was something that I had, it was a monthly goal that's set up with my team and stuff for us to come up with what we needed to be grateful for and then to write our own affirmations. But I love mine. And so every morning as I get ready, which is in a blur, I just stop, take that moment, and then it kind of sets me up for the day so that I'm walking into work with that mindset.
I think this segment's going to resonate with you. What's your name?
Stephanie.
Stephanie, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right, I need your help again. I want to know what time you all get up. And no judgment. I mean, this is an anonymity. So, we almost have a majority in this room. Okay. Well, it appears that the vast majority of us, again, no judgment, we all have different schedules, perhaps. I mean, I could also have one of these mentimeters of how late you work, so there's a corollary. So, I mean, no judgment, but for the most part, it appears that we like to wake up earlier. I mean, if we go from 4 to 7, I mean, it's 3/4 of the room. So, give yourself a little whoop whoop. Okay. Why is that relevant? Not the whoop whoop, but is that the most successful individuals in any industry, in any walk of life, are those that get up early. They studied the 5 most successful CEOs, and they were all a part of the 5 a.m. club. And why do they get up? They don't just get up to drink coffee, and I'm sure that all of you don't do that either. So I want to talk about a routine, but I first want to introduce the individual that I had an opportunity to meet that introduced it. And has anybody heard of, his name's up there, so I'm not going to ask you who it is, but has anybody heard of Hal Elrod? You know who he is, or has anybody read his book? Okay. A quick aside is that Hal has actually almost died a couple times. The first time in a car accident where he flatlined for 6 minutes. I didn't want to show you the image of the car because it's so gruesome that I just couldn't put it on there. And then after he got past that, he actually, a few years later, was diagnosed with an advanced form of cancer. And this is him, his family, and there's actually, even if you were to Google YouTube Hal Elrod chemotherapy talk, he's still out speaking while he's undergoing advanced treatment for a position they said he had a very unlikely chance of success. And during the time he was ill, he was actually studying successful people all over the world while he was in bed to really identify how people are successful. Because he couldn't make the choice that he was ill, he could only make the choice of what he did because he was. So he came up with a modality called savers. And that each letter stands for something, obviously. So first is silence, meditation, and prayer. And if you can read the fine print, it's pretty big for all of you, I suppose. There's 1,400 studies scientifically proven that any form of meditation or prayer is beneficial. And then the next, 7, had mentioned was a part of your routine, but this is a bit different. And I would encourage, if you don't do affirmations, that you really consider that. Because we go back to the fact that 80% of what we experience internally is negative. We need to fortify ourselves. And the way with which to do that is to do an I am positive. But Hal, Saber's method, takes that a step forward. He makes it a commitment statement. I am committed to whatever result by a specific date, and I am going to take certain action steps to achieve them for a certain amount of days, no matter what. I can share from experience, some individuals have done that, I've done that. That really separates the wheat from the chaff. Then next, visualization. We'll go back. I guess we already talked about self-care. Visualization is proven to work, whether it is in somebody in sports, somebody that is healing. In fact, has anybody seen the documentary on Netflix, Heal? Please do. Please see it. It's incredible. It's stories like Hal Elrod of how visualization and positive mental attitude has healed individuals that they thought were at a point of no return. Fascinating. Who in here has been too busy to exercise ever? Yeah. All right, me too. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of story about something that helped me remove my exercise excuse. So about 7 years ago, I was on a great conference and vacation. I was at an entrepreneurs organization conference and I'm with my wife Susie, and we're with a longtime nanny who now is a family, and then at the time my son, who was almost 6 years old. And we had gotten a call while there that there was this baby boy that we were on the adoption list for a long time. And this baby boy, they said, "Can you meet us?" We said, "Well, we're halfway around the world, but we'd like to understand more about this situation." He said, "Well, he's going to be born in about a week and a half, and his mother is severely heroin addicted. So he'll be on withdrawal up to at least 2 months, and there'll definitely need to be methadone as a part of that, and you would need to commit to extensive time in the hospital with skin-to-skin contact in order to accelerate him getting out of the hospital." So my wife and I talked about it, decided that was what we wanted to do, and that's exactly what we did. And I would not imagine, but I will be honest with you, based on the things that we had on our plate at the time, we had, obviously, CEO of a company, got involved in helping another company and was going to be involved in about 12 to 15 trade shows that I was helping develop business, was going to be incoming president of Entrepreneurs Organization, which was going to be about 15 hours a week, and then a menagerie of other things. So I did it anyway, and I cannot imagine our lives without little Ryder. That's his big brother, Brayden. But I will tell you that sometimes the challenge that individuals give you is the best thing, even when you're at your most vulnerable. So I told a friend of mine, I said, I know we have this climb in a few months. I can't do it. I can't do it, brother. I got too much going. He goes, first of all, have you ever tried Tabata? I said, well, we're talking about food now? I said, no, Tabata. You ever done Tabata? He's like, I'm not going to take you off the list for that climb unless you do Tabata. He's like, you've always been able to accomplish anything you set your mind to. I said, okay. So that's what I did. And does anybody know, has anybody tried Tabata in here? Okay, what are your thoughts?
I use it working out. I love it.
Why do you love it?
Because it not only kind of keeps you consistent, but it keeps you at a pace where you don't feel overwhelmed, but you also don't feel like you underachieve. So that's, yeah.
Do you like the time compression?
Yeah. I usually do 3 sets of like 30 stretching or whatever.
So you don't need to be sold on it. You believe it. The thing that's beautiful about Tabata is it does remove all excuses, because you can do a high impact workout in roughly 4 minutes. So I was taking before different exercises, maybe an hour and a half. I was able to do the same through some engineering in about 12. And that blob that reached Mount Hood was basically the person that did Tabata that didn't have an hour and a half workout time. So maybe some of the clothing was a part of the blob, but reading. If you're somebody who enjoys white pages and has a lot better vision than I do, perhaps that's your route. I will tell you that Audible has been a game changer for me. I had a goal to read a book every 3 weeks last year. I read a book every 2 weeks, thanks to Audible. And oftentimes the authors are actually, it's their voices. That's become more of a standard. And last but not least, of the savers, it's scribing. And this was one of the hardest ones for me, because always on the move, always on the go, to open up something and write down plans, affirmations, accomplishments. And so I did struggle with, and that's one thing I would encourage, is find a community of individuals that support you. So because I'd complained about it, I had a friend that I'd helped his company. He actually custom made that for me.
Yeah, it's really good. I've never seen anything like that. That's
Oh,
really good.
I mean, custom
I'm
made.
stealing it.
Yeah, feel free. I'm going to show these slides.
Yeah.
And then another friend of mine helped me with this leather-bound journal. So it was more substantial, so it had more meaning. So that and personalization, I journal on a regular basis. So that's, and it's really cathartic, reflective, valuable for me. So Savers, very valuable, great book by L. Elrod. All right, habits and hacks if you have the knack. Another sobering statistic, I'm not trying to make everybody feel bad, I'm just a little bit of a wake-up call. So 92%, I mean, we started a new year, we're not even done with the first quarter, but 92% of the individuals that set out and make goals don't achieve them. That's a high stat. Now, that doesn't mean, to kind of lift you up, that doesn't mean that those of us that, and all of us have not achieved goals, period, let's face it. It doesn't mean that we're lazy. It doesn't mean that we're unmotivated or that we're lame losers. We likely wanted to achieve that goal. We wouldn't have said it otherwise. But it's not about the goals. And this is another great read, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Anybody read this book? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. And he says it perfectly. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. We front load what we want to do with our goals. We seek what we want to achieve. But we don't actually put the plan, the clarity, and the habitual systems required to actually achieve the goal. That's critical. You know, we have a starting line, we have a goal we want to achieve. But as we think about that, and I'm using the slide to the right of it, think about how many time stealers we have in any given day. Life happens. That's actually one of the importances of why you want to get up early, because it's a calm time, it's a quieter time, it's less distractions, enables you to focus. So, I want to talk a little bit about habit stacking, because it's a very simplistic and powerful way to incorporate additional positive habits based on what you want to achieve. And so it's really simple, because and these are a couple of my examples. So after, before a current habit, I will insert new habit. So in this case, after I wake up, I will put on my workout clothes. And that was one of my successful moves when I would have a couple hours of sleep. And the last thing I wanted to do was work out after I came back from the hospital holding my little baby boy. But I did it anyway, and it felt silly to wake up and put workout clothes on for 3 to 5 minutes and just sit there and then take them off and go back to bed. So inevitably I worked out. After I had my cup of coffee, which I do consistently, I will journal. Journal was a struggle for me, but I associate that habit stacking with the two. And now honestly, it's hard for me to do it without the other. Once you program yourself, you're there. And then before I go to bed, which sleeping has never been something I'm amazing at, although I'm getting better, I will read something to positively distract myself, and I will give myself 5 affirmations. I put those together. So those are a couple of examples. I'm sure that you have yours too, because it's not about, I think this is what, when we look at extraordinary accomplishments, I think a lot of times it's demoralizing, because we think, how did that person get to that point? I'll never catch up. When in fact there's a formula in James Clear's modality that is that if you incrementally improve by 1% a day, that by the end of a given year on that thing you're seeking to improve, you'll be 37 times better. 37 times. Just by being consistent. So, a few things just to share some helpful hacks. So I'm a big, anyone ever read Death by Meetings, that book? Okay, it's interesting. But I have a rule that in a meeting, that if there's no agenda, I don't attend it. If there's not a purposeful plan or clarity of a meeting, there's really no need to attend. So another habit, hack is the 1-3-1 empowerment rule. Does anybody know what that might be? Okay, so obstacles are what we run into, problems, all of us on a daily basis, either us or our teams. And there's going to be the problem, but instead of the problem being shared and somebody giving that problem to us or saying, I just can't do it, is encouraging and empowering them to bring up 3 solutions. And then from those 3 solutions, they thought out the one they like the best and why. It's effective. Then email. We all get a lot of emails. So I'm a real fan of email. Don't let your inbox control you. Time block those emails. There's different apps and so forth to turn off your email, or if you're someone that just turns it off yourself, time block those emails and be intentional. Also template. If you've got similar emails that you send, template those, templatize those, have those on your desktop. Then you really would like to feel comfortable deleting. It's okay. They're in your trash folder. It's almost like an archive folder. You could search it, or you could search your sent file. So then you want to make sure, I have 100%, my team knows, I have a few team members here. Do I ever miss an email?
No.
Do I? No. And it's not because I'm doing anything other than the fact that I draft it. So if Amy sends me an email, and she knows that she can count on me, and it's a time where I'm getting out of my email time block, I would go, hi Amy, draft. It's my checklist. I can revisit that. Maybe it's an answer that needs to happen by Friday. I will never miss that. And I remove the anxiety of having to remember to respond to somebody that I've made a commitment to. And then last is, if you do have some folders, just drag them there. And don't have an overabundance of folders, because then you have the same clutter you dealt with leaving everything in and not deleting. All right, enough on email. Production. I'm a big fan of doing things in tranches, tasks in tranches. So if you're working on processes, find time blocks you work on processes. If you're working on people and with people, work in that. If you're working on vision and ideas, work in that. I have friends that actually take retreat days outside of work to get in their think space. So, and then next, it's kind of funny. I'm a creature of habit. I think we all are. And I go to my phone to those social media icons so regularly. So every once in a while, I move them. Or I have somebody that I trust move them. And it's fascinating how much I'll go there. It's sort of like when your electricity's off and you still try to flip the switch. So I mentioned James Clear earlier, and what he does is his executive assistant actually disables his during the week, and then lets him get those at 6 o'clock every Friday night. So I've not done that yet, but it'd be interesting. And then when we talk about time, it's really empowering once in a while. We do this at our company, is doing time studies. And you might think, well, I don't know, what am I going to find? But if you find 15 minutes, it's meaning and material if you're intentional. Just time studies. Don't judge yourself. You already have your own judge. Just externalize it, look at your time, and see what you can change. And then this somewhat speaks to the 131, but there's two different types of leadership style, whether you're a leader in here, and I know we have leaders in here, or whether you're part of a team where you're seeking to be more productive and to just have more proficiency. Is there's a transactional leadership and a transformational leadership. Would you like me to tell you the difference? Okay, it's late in the day. Okay. Transactional is the following. I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to check to see you've done it, or you're going to check back with me that you've done it. And then the next thing is either you're going to come to me or I'm going to come to you. And I see some laughter over here. Is that resonating? That's transactional, and it's well intended, but what happens is it reaches a ceiling. It's not sustainable. That's what not to do, and we've all been there. That's probably why there's maybe some people slinking in their seats beyond the fact it's later in the day or laughing about it. Transformational instead is the following. Determine an optimal outcome. What is the optimal outcome to be accomplished that we all can agree on? Where are we aligned? Secondly, what are the measurements, metrics, and key performance indicators surrounding that optimal outcome? What is your definition of done? And then lastly, because we want to encourage failure and failing forward, we allow for coaching. So there's an opportunity to coach, an opportunity to experience share, but it's not, don't mistake that coaching for taking someone else's problem away from them. That is disempowering. We coach. You're available to coach. And I've seen a lot of change in that style and a lot of time savings from that. Not to mention a lot of happier, more empowered, more growth-minded individuals get an opportunity to take the next step. And then lastly, be bold, get cold. All right. Anybody take cold showers, cold immersion? Yeah? All right. We got a pretty good swap. All right. Who does a really cool cold routine? You don't? Okay. Your hand went up. All right. Okay, no routine, but you raised your hand.
I did raise my hand. I just do it in my shower, but I turn it on in the morning, like the last 5 minutes before you got.
Okay, great. So you do it for 5 minutes?
If I can make it that long.
If you can make it that long. Well, cold showers are kind of like type 2 fun. I mean, they're not always great. But there is a tremendous number of benefits here. I'll send this slide. I mean, it is, and then I don't know if does anybody know who Wim Hof is? Yeah, incredible. A close friend of mine is shaking his head back there. We did an exercise in San Diego with his team, and it is fascinating. He's the Iceman. He's done absolutely extraordinary things as it pertains to getting cold and how he connects his body and mind to that. So if you're interested in this, just anything cold, well, that's me and my cold pool, so oops, that's maybe out of order. But that's me smiling despite having type 2 fun when my pool is about 44 degrees. I don't know if it's appropriate, but I feel there's somebody in the room that accomplished something great. It's not 100% of a happy story, but a friend of mine right there, Mike Powers, who's the CEO of Alliance Partitions, survived Deception Pass longer than any human being did. Close to 5 hours, right? 8 hours. I think the longest human being that had ever done that was maybe 45 minutes. Have been a part of cold immersion as a part of meeting other business peers and doing that as a health exercise. And there's possibly something really special about him besides the fact that he is just special, but it saved his life. So cold can help you in a lot of different ways, and it can provide clarity. And if you, I don't know if anybody knows who Dr. Andrew Huberman is. He's a PhD scientist from Stanford, brilliant person. He has a whole thing, which I have a QR code at the end of this, on showers, baths, cryo, and the fact that the dopamine levels, I don't want to give anybody a science lesson because I'm not qualified, but the dopamine levels when you take a cold immersion last longer past baseline than anything else. Past anything else. More so than any over-the-counter or any hustled narcotic. All right, gratefulness is the greatest. Gratefulness is the greatest. So I suppose that some of you, it's safe to say, you're all busy multifamily professionals. Likely at times have a never-ending to-do list. Is that fair? Okay. And is it overly assumptive to think that at times it keeps you up at night? Yes. Okay. All right, so you're gonna join the club. So let's just have fun and let's just do a gratefulness cloud. So just give it to the QR code. You have 3 different things you can be grateful for. Is it not working? Oh, whoa, okay, here we go. Here we go. It's pretty good. Okay, still populating. Family, health, friends, time, hope, relationships, eyes, cats, dogs, growth, housing. Okay, that makes sense in this room. Time, opportunity. I mean, this illustrates how much there is to be grateful for, does it not? Do you know the percentage of the human population that does gratitude exercises? About 6%. 6%. And all we have to do is be grateful. Because at any given time, there is a time when we're down or we think that maybe we got a raw deal. I know that I just recently had a procedure on my hip because I had torn tendons from an old football injury and I was walking with a hitch. And my ability to do physical things was part of my identity. And I honestly felt sorry for myself until I got off the plane and I saw a paraplegic. My hip's now repaired, but I need to get my head right. Gratefulness helps any of us get our head right. Because it does so many powerful things. From negativity, it helps us physically, mentally, boost self-esteem. There's a whole litany of things that it does. It helps heal us. I mean, I talked about that documentary, Heal. There's a huge gratefulness component in that. And I will share from experience, I had a difficult time sleeping, and my routine by doing gratefulness when I get up and at night has made a tremendous difference. And honestly, it's not my original idea. These are things I've stolen from a lot of subject matter experts and individuals that have achieved elite levels of how they live their lives. So, some lessons learned as we come to a close. And I thought I would just focus on the things that I would highly encourage anyone not to do. So I would recommend that you do not underestimate repetition. Be patient. Consistent predictability beats occasional talent and intermittent quality all day long. Even if you're the tortoise, you will beat the hare. Secondly, do not overestimate motivation. Overestimating motivation of a feeling that's fleeting. It's not motivation. It's clarity, it's plans, it's discipline, it's habits. Then, don't undercut yourself. We already touched on that. And we're all doing it. We're all doing it all day long. You don't have to lie to yourself, but you're already lying to yourself with excuses. So you may as well tell yourself the truth that this is what I'm capable of. I'm going to do it by X date. I'm committed to doing it for X amount of days, no matter what. And then next, don't overlook opportunities. Even if they're scary, even if you're not sure that you're quite there yet. Because that obstacle, that barrier, that desire to step outside the comfort cave is likely what is going to help you find the next best version of yourself. Also, don't undervalue boldness. And like I said earlier, don't be afraid to be bold in whatever it is you do. Get your money's worth. Every second. The myth is that we have all kinds of time. We don't. We don't. And then lastly, do not overthink purpose. And I'm going to share an experience, and I do have another universal gift card I'm about to offer as we come to a close. Does anybody know who that individual is? Go ahead. The peanut guy. So that's how most of them know, but does anybody know his name? That's the $100 gift card. Okay. So his name, Rick Kaminsky, aka the Peanut Guy, who worked with the Mariners for 34 years. And in 2001, I was early to a game, sitting at the edge of a seat, and some friends of us ordered some peanuts. And this man, literally, I mean, he had the ability, if you've seen him, he could hurl, to the back row, he could throw it behind his neck, he could look the other way, and he could hit you with a strike. And so I was really interested. I said, I asked him his name, I talked to him, I said, what inspired you to get so good at this? And he said, well, I guess I just figured if I was going to do this, that I would be the best. And beyond that, what I've seen, and I've been doing this, I think at the time, what was that, 8 or 9 years? What I've seen in the last decade is that people come to see me do this, even if they're not necessarily coming to watch the baseball game initially. But families, friends, relationships are formed, and I get an opportunity to witness that. So I get a chance to make impact. All from being the peanut guy. And so that was really inspiring to me, because that was my office. Very limited. No help. Long days. Sick wife 3 years in with cancer. Full remission, 20 years anniversary this year. And if there's anything I'm proud of, more than anything else, is that I didn't stop. I'm not going to lie to you and say I wasn't fearful. I'm certainly not going to tell you I didn't make mistakes. And I'm certainly not going to say that I'll not fail again, because I will again and again, on the way to improvement. This is my office today. In one of our facilities. And my mom reminded me before she passed that this office was bigger than my business used to be. So with that, as we come to a close, I just want to encourage you all to do something today that your future self will thank you for. There's something you can do. It doesn't have to be grandiose, but it must be something. Because otherwise, the day is wasted on the potential that you all have. And then when you're considering what you want to do, or if you want to do it, just know this is one of my favorite quotes. I'm a football fan. This is from Tom Landry, although I'm not a Cowboys fan. Is that the start is what stops most people. Don't be afraid to start. Thank you very much. Onward, upward. Here's some of the QR codes for some of the resources that I referenced. If you want to scan those, and I believe we'll share this slide, correct? Okay.
Okay, thank you.